about the Philadelphia Eagles. Is Coach Wannstedt buying it? Let me put this in perspective for you before I bring Coach on. Coach has got Super Bowl rings. He was there at the beginning when they constructed that Dallas Cowboy defense and that Dallas Cowboy football team. He was Jimmy's right-hand man along with Bob Ackles there as they were looking for players to try to build that dynasty. Coach went on, had a great run with the Miami Dolphins. He was the Bears head coach. And get this, I believe if I'm not mistaken, so Coach Wannstedt, him and Butch Davis. So am I right? Darrelle Revis, Aaron Donald. These are all the Pitt dudes he had. I'm going to tell you this, man. As much as I crow about Miami, Pitt was Pitt before we were with all of our talent. Dude, all the great players they had, Hugh Green, Ricky Jackson, Tony Dorsett, all them superstar players. Their O-line, everyone, Bill Fralick, all them guys, Stepnoski. Let's bring in our friend, my former coach, Dave Wannstedt from Fox Sports. Coach, I've said this before, man. I mean, you know, when you're looking at talent and you're putting talent out there and you're evaluating talent, you know, we were talking earlier on the show about Jalen Hurts. Jalen now, second-round pick. How he had to look at that, because that's a quality and a premium pick. Have you been surprised with his growth?
Well, to be honest with you, Danny, did you like how I one-upped you here?
I see it, man. I see the Canes gear. I dig it. I love it.
I knew you'd be doing something, so I figured I would. I'm in my closet looking through for some Miami swag to kind of up
I
you
love
on,
it.
you know?
I love it. It looks great. Coach, I'm honoring you. You're the 87 Canes there. I got you there, man.
I know. They sent me – I couldn't make it because I do all the Bears games here but in Chicago, but they sent me a nice swag bag, so I'm all set.
Very nice. Coach, have you been surprised with Jalen?
You know what? 3 years ago, I actually said when I was doing the NFL on Fox, I actually made the statement that I thought he would be replaced by the end of the year with Gardner Minshew, who was the backup quarterback at the time. And I tell you what, though, I think you got to give Jalen a lot of credit. But the one thing about Jalen Hurts, when you talk to people at Oklahoma and you talk to people at Alabama, if you put the football aside, everybody to a man says, hire him on your team. I don't care what business you're in, and he's going to make you better because of his character and his work ethic and his intelligence. So I think the Eagles, give them credit. They saw this in him, and they went out and surrounded him with a lot more talent. A.J. Brown, obviously, they had some draft picks. They added a couple offensive linemen. And now they're reaping the benefits of it. You know, he got better. The talent around him got better. And here's where we sit. They're undefeated and making a run at this thing.
You know, Coach Johnson said yesterday on a local radio show in Dallas that he's not sold on him. And I'll tell you, Coach, there's a part of me, too, that kind of sees what Jimmy sees because, I mean, the Vikings, I get it. They beat Cooper Rush. They didn't beat Dak. I get all that. And really, the rest of them have been really tomato cans. How can you, when you look at an 8-0 record, when you look at the Eagles, do you think they have enough experience in the postseason? There's very few guys from that 17 team that's left on that team that won that Super Bowl. There's nobody in the coaching staff. This is a brand new ride for them. How do you see the Eagles? Are you buying them?
I am. And I'll tell you why. I think they have the best in that division. As tough as that division is, we know how good Dallas's defense is. No question about it. We know where the Giants are running the football, right, with Saquon and company. But I'll tell you what, I believe that the Philadelphia Eagles have the best offense and defensive lines. And when you get deep into those playoffs, now all of a sudden the linemen on both sides of the ball, in my opinion, start separating themselves a little bit from the rest of the pack. So I like the Eagles. I truly do. I and the big question is, okay, they're 2 touchdowns behind. can Jalen Hurts bring him back? I mean, why not? I mean, I look at it and say, why not? I mean, what Dak Prescott's a great player, but we really haven't seen that with him. I mean, Jalen Hurts has as much winning pedigree to him as any quarterback in the league. This guy has won and been a champion everywhere he's been. He gets it. And it's going to be interesting to see. But right now, I'm on the Eagles. I think the Vikings, you mentioned them. Sure, they're 7-1. And when you look at their roster,
a lot of close games too, Coach.
Five games, you're right. 5 games, 1 touchdown. Now, here's what can happen. Are the Vikings, is the glass half full or is it half empty, Danny? Because when you look at their talent at receiver, at running back, at quarterback, on defense, the defensive line, they got frontline Pro Bowl type players at every level of that team. But you look at the statistics, put their stats up comparatively to these other teams, and they're in the middle of the pack. They're not doing anything superbly at this point. They really aren't. Offense or defense, they're not dominating any one area. You would say, okay, the Giants are struggling a little bit on defense, but boy, they run the football. I mean, Dallas, has been maybe a little inconsistent on offense, but they are dominating on defense. That hasn't happened. Now, it can because they have talent. The Vikings are a very interesting team. When they get into playoffs, that football team could go one way or another.
Coach, you've been in a board meeting. You've been in a personnel meeting when you've had to make this decision. And I say this all the time. A head coach's career is based on that quarterback decision, and you know that as well as anybody, Coach. If you don't have the right signal caller, if you go into what happens, say they go on a nice run, they go long and they do this, are you going to pay market value at the end of the year for Jalen Hurts, which is now in the room of $45 million? And you know this, Coach, with the salary cap being the way it is, you're not keeping a $25 million wideout. Kansas City just let the best wide receiver go in the NFL because they couldn't afford him because Tua's still on a rookie contract. It's the only way that they were able to pay him, and Waddle's on a rookie contract. What would you do if you're Howie Roseman? Because at the end of this year, they get to start negotiating extensions. Is he the guy, in your opinion, moving forward?
I think that quarterbacks are solely evaluated on playoff wins and Super Bowls, Danny, at the end of the day. I mean, unfortunately, whether it's fair or not fair, I mean, they're like head coaches. That's what it comes down to, whether you stay or not. It all comes down to, can you win a Super Bowl? Have you won a Super Bowl? What have you done in the playoffs? And I think so. I'm not ready to make that decision. I'll tell you what, they go to the NFC Championship game or get in the Super Bowl. My question would be to Howie Rosen, okay, who are we going to get right now? We got a good young team. Who are we going to get right now to take his place? Just tell me, if Aaron Rodgers is coming, then great. Let's talk about it. You know what I mean? Or whoever, Lamar Jackson. But so I think it's too early to really say what are we going to do at the end of the year, because quarterbacks usually are evaluated on playoff wins and Super Bowl. So let's see what happens.
When you guys were building the Cowboys, I don't believe Dan Marino could go into Dallas. And I don't believe, as great as Dan was, I don't think he could have went into that offense and won Super Bowls, because that team wasn't built for that. It was built for Aikman, and Aikman being proficient on third down. Emmett with 28 carries. That's a whole different dynamic. So isn't it more about where I'm going, Coach, isn't it more about the pieces, like what they're trying to do now? They're finally coaching Justin Fields right. They're coaching him like Jalen Hurts. Isn't it more about putting the talent around one quarterback? You need all these pieces around Jalen. You don't need a ton of pieces around Dan Marino, because Dan can throw you out of trouble.
Yeah, and I put pieces around them, and then what are you doing with them to give him a chance to be successful? And that's what you mentioned, the Bears. That's what they're doing. I think in the last game, Danny, I think they threw 3 drop back passes. It's all the boots. It's waggles. It's
RPOs.
They added the quarterback designed runs, the Connor, the old this quarterback sweeps, the quarterback power that we would run, with Emmett. I mean, the runs that we were running with the running back, the Bears are running those now with their quarterback in there with Justin Fields, and it's made all the difference in the world. And so what? These teams get hung up. Look what Seattle's doing with Geno Smith, and they're moving them. They're running boots. They're running waggles. So they're not giving them 5 reads. That stuff all sounds good in a clinic on a chalkboard, right? I mean, you know how that goes. People ask me about a spy. The spying? I said, spying, I've lived that life going back to Randall Cunningham. I said, let me tell you something. I said, the spy, that all sounds good when you're at a clinic and you're drawing up on the board. Get out there and try to make it work. It's a whole different ballgame. You know that. You've lived it.
Spy with Coach Wannstedt? I don't think so.
No, you were never the spy.
No, because you would say this. Once you 4 guys hit him in the mouth.
Yeah, but if we did, and I remember when we played the Eagles, going back to Randall Cunningham, who was a great athlete, a lot like the guys that we're talking about now. And we brought a safety in sometimes and spied him. And once in a while we did it with a linebacker. And once in a while we dropped somebody. But it sounds a lot better on the board, on the chalkboard, than on the field.
Coach, help me out here on this. The Eagles are 20th against the rush. And you see some teams having success. They lose this kid, Jordan Davis, who really was a factor. I didn't really think he was. Now you got some teams coming up. Antonio Gibson on Monday night can run the ball. Then you're looking at Saquon coming into Lincoln Financial. You're going to take on Aaron Jones. Plus, you also, with Tennessee, you're going to have Derrick Henry. How do you fix that? A lot of teams are going to that 50 front, Coach, where they'll drop a guy on the nose, put 2 guys on the tackles, and they'll have that 50 front look. And so they've got some talent in there. Fletcher Cox, they could put Hardgrave on the nose, Milton Williams on the guard. How do you You're in the middle of the season right now. How can you fix that, Coach? Or can you, or is that just who you are now?
No, I mean, every game takes on, a different game plan of its own. What are they doing really well? Who's their best offensive lineman? Are they a big team that we can move on up front? Are they a quick, agile team that we would stay away from that and we would do other things? So each game would take on kind of its life of its own, as I used to say. And I'll tell you what, a lot of times you got to look at that rushing stat, and the Eagles are winning games. So they're out in front. So at the end of the game, teams are not really running it much. They're throwing it.
So you know what I mean? It's empty calorie stats a little bit, maybe.
I think a little bit. I truly do. I'm not concerned about the Eagles stopping the run one bit. I'm really not, because of the people they have.
Coach, I talked to Butch about this. And tell me if this is true when you guys were putting that defense together. And by the way, I don't think people realize this. When the Cowboys were winning those Super Bowls, they were the youngest team in the National Football League at the time because you guys were just getting young talent and putting young talent in there. Coach, they don't really practice a lot. And Butch said this to me. We found out, and we had the metrics and the analytics on this, when we didn't practice a lot during the regular season, that number would tend to go up. And so you guys always had, and I know this for a fact, we always had inside drill, and our yards per carry went down because you guys worked us the way they did. Do you subscribe to that? And maybe that's why sometimes you see some of these teams going the other way with yards per carry?
Well, we don't have enough time to talk about it, but I 100% believe that the reason that offensive line play is so average or below average in a lot of cases, I don't want to say most, in a
I agree.
majority of cases,
I think it's the worst I've seen in a long time, Coach.
Because they don't practice. They don't get better. The only way an offensive lineman or a defensive line, you can't do it against dummies out there or machines out there. I mean, you've got to get your hands on people and move your face. Offensive linemen got to hit a moving target. I mean, and if they're not doing it live and they're not working on those fundamentals, they don't get better. They do not get better. And I think as a result, that's what we're seeing. And I'm not so sure it doesn't go all the way back to college, Danny. You know what I mean? I mean, the colleges really aren't doing much more live contact than what
20 practices, right, Coach? 20 practices.
Oh, and then the first 3 are just shorts.
Yeah.
So then the next 2 or 3 are, and then you can only have 1 or 2 scrimmages, and you got to log everything that you're doing in there. And so I think it probably starts at, and then the last thing is Tony Wise, our line coach, used to say, these guys don't want to put their hand in the dirt. They don't want to put their hand down anymore. And how are you going to knock somebody off the ball, or how are you going to be, by standing up in a 2-point stance and letting that guy run in? So I think just the whole philosophy of offensive line play has changed so much, going back to the college and probably high school level, all the way up, that it's really affecting what's going on in the NFL right now.
2 last questions, Coach. Micah Parsons. I watched LT. When I was in the league, I saw LT, and I'm like, that's not LT. Now, I'm not saying he's not a fine player, but can you consider a guy being on a good football team when last week the Bears ran for 240 yards on them? I mean, Coach, all I remember is this. There was a guy who went for 250 on us, and all I remember was a table getting flipped upside down going, you motherfucker. And that's the game I remember. I've already told you this a few times. I go, hey, Jerome, we won 38-3, right? I don't know, man.
I think I flipped that table at halftime. I didn't even wait till the end.
All I remember was, what's his name? Kevin O'Neill set out all these Gatorades, man. We're sitting there, and I go like this. This is not going to be good, I'm telling you. You came running in there. No other coach didn't say anything. You motherfuckers, you came, flipped the tab, like, holy shit.
Well,
because you guys don't know, it's his alma mater.
Yeah, we were playing.
You made that guy look like Tony Dorsett.
Well, I'll tell you what, now that I look back and watch his tape, God bless his soul. He's a good friend, but Ironhead Hayward, Coach, he was, I mean, all I know is when your safeties are making the tackles, you're not, in my mind, you're not playing good enough defense. And God bless Benny Blades.
It was too cold. Hey, Jerome kept going like this. God damn, man. I go, dude, he's going to kill us. When we get in there, I'm telling you, we're going to run for this. He goes, no, we won't. We won 38-3. And I go, dude, I'm telling you, man, this guy's going to go nuts on us.
Well, during the game, a little sidebar, they're running and just what you're saying.
It's crazy.
We can't stop them. And Jimmy's on the phone and he's saying, Dave, we got to come up with something different. And I'm looking at the call sheet. And at one point I said, Coach, we are out of bullets. I was so thankful Jimmy didn't play that game. I'm like, holy cow. Hey, Coach, finally here for you. Building a national champion football team in college or a Super Bowl team, tougher to build? Oh, you know what? It might be tougher to build in college almost if you're starting from scratch because the players leave. I mean, after 3 years, by the time you figure out how good they are, it's the freshman year. So you get 2 years out of them, maybe, and then they're gone. I mean, I lived that with Darrelle Revis, with LaShawn McCoy. Aaron Donald, I mean, on and on and on. And that's just the way it is. So I think if you got the great tradition and you got things going in college to maintain, but our good friend, Mario Cristobal down there, he's got his work cut out for him. He truly does because he's starting from scratch. They do have tradition and they got players. So that should, shorten that comeback span a little bit. But, boy, it's tough.
Hey, Coach, man, Mario texts me after every game, and he goes, hey, I go, listen, you got half that roster that don't belong in Hurricane uniforms, and you know that as well as I do. And he goes like this, I can't say that, though. And I go like this. I go, well, I'll tell you what. If Coach Johnson or these guys were there, half those guys would be brought in, and they would have their scholarships taken away from them. Because the one thing that you guys always said, there ain't no – hey, guys, nobody's on a 4-year ride here. No, and I go, I thought these things were 4 years. He goes, hell no, man. But you guys were like this. Nobody's on a 4-year scholarship in here.
Well, it's tough. It's not easy. And then, everything you got going on right now with these college kids with the NIL and everything else, it's a challenge. It truly is. And, hopefully they can get it turned around, except for the last game this year. I got to be honest with you. I'm a Cane, but that last game, Pittsburgh goes down and plays them. So I'm with my alma mater on that one, Danny. Yep.
Hey, Coach, I leave you here with this. If Big Sills had NIL back in the day, I would have had 38 pizzerias down in South Florida called Big Sills. Coach,
yes,
thank you.
You still had a couple, I think, and we weren't even allowed to give them to you.
What, are you talking to Corvette? It's all good. Get that car out of here, Sileo. Holy cow. Coach, I love you. Thank you so much. Have a great weekend, Coach.
Same, buddy.
You got it. That is Dave Wannstedt. God, do I love that man very much. Okay. Hit the like button. Do me a favor. We'll be back. Close it up. We'll take a look at some of those predictions again. Keep it here on the National Football Show.
Philadelphia.